Hey everyone and welcome back. Today we're doing a deep dive on Broke Millennial. It's a book that really tries to help us, change how we think about money. And I think we can all relate to, especially early on, feeling a little clueless when it comes to finances.
Yeah, absolutely. And this book really kind of digs into why so many millennials feel this money anxiety, even when, they're doing okay financially. It's really not just about being good with numbers, but it's also about understanding the psychology, I guess, behind our money habits.
Right. Like I had this friend, Lizzie. And Lizzie, she had a stable job, no student loans,
Okay.
but she would practically break out in hives whenever we talked about money.
Oh, wow.
Turns out she is not alone. The book uses stories just like Lizzie's to show how common this money anxiety is, especially for our generation.
Yeah, and it's so true. And the book doesn't just point it out as a problem, but it actually offers a solution. One of the big takeaways, I think, is this idea of replacing shame with empowerment. And so it actually encourages us to look back at our family's financial history and to see how that might be influencing our own money mindset today.
Okay, so let's break down this family history thing a little bit. Is the author suggesting that, we all need therapy to understand our finances?
Not necessarily therapy, but definitely some self-reflection.
Hmm.
So think about your childhood. Did money always equal fights? Was it a hush-hush topic? The point isn't to blame anyone, but to try to spot those early patterns that might, without us realizing it, shaping how we handle money now.
I see what you mean. It's like we might not even realize that we're copying our parents' money habits until we actually stop and think about it.
Exactly. And the book also digs into how different family approaches to spending can impact us. So let's say your parents, even if they hid it well, they were living paycheck to paycheck. That experience of financial instability can really leave a mark. And it can kind of create this underlying fear of ending up in the same situation.
So even if money wasn't a huge source of stress growing up, there still might be some underlying baggage to unpack, right?
Exactly. And Broke Millennial really argues that unpacking that baggage, understanding where these feelings and habits come from, that's essential to making lasting positive changes in your financial life.
Okay, so how does the book suggest we start tackling this money baggage and creating those positive changes? I know it talks a lot about budgeting, right?
It does, it does. And it actually starts with a really, I guess you could say a personal anecdote from the author's early 20s.
Hmm.
So she used something called the envelope system. And it's pretty simple. You divide your cash into different envelopes, each labeled for a specific expense, like groceries, rent, entertainment.
That's interesting. It sounds almost charmingly old school, in our digital age. Did it work for her?
Well, so she shares this kind of funny story about keeping hundreds of dollars in a sock drawer in her New York City apartment. Let's just say she learned the hard way that maybe having that much cash just lying around isn't the most secure strategy.
Yeah, not exactly the best way to protect your money. But her point is that,
Hmm.
she started somewhere.
Right.
And those early attempts, even if they weren't perfect, they helped her figure out what worked best for her.
Right. And Broke Millennial really emphasizes that everyone's financial journey is different. What works for one person might not work for another, and that's okay. And so the book actually offers multiple budgeting approaches to kind of find what suits you best.
Like the 50-20-30 rule, which seems to be everywhere these days.
Yes.
Yeah.
This rule suggests dividing your after-tax income into three categories. 50% for essential expenses like your rent and groceries, 20% for savings and any debt repayment, and then 30% for your lifestyle choices like dining out or entertainment.
Okay, that makes sense. It's a really clear framework for figuring out where your money should be going each month. But the book also talks about something called zero-sum budgeting, which sounds a bit more intense.
It can be, but it's incredibly effective for some people, especially those with irregular income like freelancers. Essentially, zero-sum budgeting assigns every single dollar a specific job. It's all about being very intentional and knowing exactly where your money is going.
So lots of different budgeting options to explore. But no matter what method you choose, tracking your spending seems crucial.
Yes,
You need that clear picture of where your money is actually going to make informed decisions, right?
absolutely. It's so easy to feel like you're bleeding money without really knowing where it's all going. Now, Broke Millennial doesn't just stop at budgeting, does it? It covers a whole range of financial topics that, I don't know about you, but I find these topics can feel really kind of overwhelming sometimes. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And it tackles them in a way that feels manageable, even if you're starting from scratch. And one of the big ones is credit scores, that kind of mysterious number that can feel like it has this huge power over our lives.
Totally. Can we demystify credit scores a bit? Like, why should we even care about them? Especially if we're not planning on buying a house or taking out a loan anytime soon.
It's a great question, and it's actually something the book addresses head on. The author shares her own, she calls it her thin file experience. Basically, she didn't have enough credit history built up to generate a score, which, can be a problem even if you've been responsible with your finances.
Oh, interesting. So a thin file is kind of like having a blank resume when you're applying for a job. It doesn't
Yeah.
look great, even if you're secretly awesome.
Exactly, exactly. And a good credit score is important for more than just loans. Landlords often check credit scores before renting to you. Some employers even consider them. And even insurance companies can use them to determine rates. It's really like this gatekeeper for so many aspects of, well, adulting.
Wow. I had no idea it had that much influence. So having a good credit score is kind of like having a golden ticket in your back pocket. It's like
Oh,
opening doors to better opportunities.
it really can be, yeah. Now, another topic that I think stresses people out, understandably so, is debt. So, Broke Millennial talks about handling both consumer debt, like credit cards, and then the big one, student loans.
Ooh, student loans.
Yeah,
Yeah, those can feel like this giant weight for so many millennials. Does the book offer any strategies for, like, tackling them?
it does. And it explains two popular methods, the debt avalanche and then the debt snowball. So, with the debt avalanche, you basically focus on paying off the debt with the highest interest rate first, which, logically makes sense. It saves you the most money in the long run.
Yeah, that sounds like the most, I don't know, like logical, strategic approach. Why would anyone choose a different method?
Because logic isn't always the most motivating factor, especially when you're dealing with debt. That's where the debt snowball comes in. So with this method, you focus on paying down your smallest debt first, regardless of the interest rates.
Okay, so it's less about the numbers and more about, like, the feeling of accomplishment.
Exactly. Knocking out that smallest debt can give you this sense of momentum and kind of keep you motivated to keep going. It's a psychological whim that can make a really big difference.
I like that. Okay, so we've got budgeting, we've got debt. What about investing? Investing has always kind of felt so intimidating to me. Like it's something only, rich people do.
Right, and that's a super common misconception. And Broke Millennial really breaks it down in a way that feels approachable. It emphasizes that you don't need to be a financial whiz or have a ton of money to get started. Even small, consistent investments can really grow significantly over time.
So where do you even begin? The book talks about index funds, right?
It does. Index funds are basically like baskets of stocks that track a particular market index, like the S&P 500, for example. And they're a great option for beginners because they offer this built-in diversification. So that means your money is spread across, various companies and industries.
Oh, okay. So that sounds a lot less risky than like putting all your eggs in one basket, so to speak, by picking individual stocks.
Exactly. And index funds also tend to have lower fees than like actively managed funds, which can eat into your returns over time. It's all about efficiency and letting your money kind of work smarter, not harder.
Love that idea. Now, another big topic the book covers is negotiating salaries, which again can feel terrifying, especially when you're just starting out in your career.
Oh, tell me about it. It can be so intimidating, but it is absolutely crucial to master. Did you know that there's a statistic out there that says that like not negotiating your first salary could cost you something like $600,000 over your lifetime?
Whoa. $600,000. Okay, that's a life-changing amount of money. Suddenly, like, having that awkward conversation feels a lot less scary.
Right. And the book actually offers a lot of like practical tips on how to approach that conversation. One key takeaway is to focus on like the value that you bring to the table. Back up your request with research on, industry standards, and don't be afraid to counteroffer if that initial offer isn't quite what you had in mind.
That's really helpful advice. Now, we can't talk about millennial finances without addressing the elephant in the room, or should I say, the roommate in the next room. The book also delves into the topic of living at home with your parents after college. right?
It does, it does. And it's a topic I think a lot of millennials really kind of grapple with. It's like, on the one hand, moving back home can be this fantastic way to like save money, pay down debt, get a head start on your finances. But on the other hand, it can bring its own set of challenges, family dynamics to navigate. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And the author actually shares this. I don't know, I thought it was kind of a brilliant concept. She calls it the parental 401k program. And it's this idea that instead of, millennials just paying rent directly to their parents, if they're living at home, those payments could actually be like invested on their behalf. And it kind of creates this surprise nest egg for when they are finally ready to move out.
I love that. It turns a potentially like tricky situation into a win-win for everyone involved.
Yeah.
It's about being creative and finding those solutions that work for both generations.
Exactly, exactly. And, I think throughout the entire book, the author really emphasizes that it's never too early or too late for that matter to, really take control of your finances, even small steps like just tracking your spending,
Yeah.
setting a budget, negotiating for a raise. These things can have such a ripple effect on your long-term financial well-being.
So as we kind of wrap up this deep dive on Broke Millennial, what's one key takeaway that you hope our listeners, walk away with today?
Well, I think the biggest message is that personal finance doesn't have to be scary or overwhelming, right? I mean, Broke Millennial really gives you the tools and the knowledge to start making informed decisions about your money, no matter how old you are, what your income is, or, even your background. It's about empowerment, not shame.
I love that. It's about taking that first step, no matter how small it is,
Yes,
and building from there.
exactly. It's a journey.
And on that note, we'll leave you with this. What is one small action that you can take today, inspired by what we've talked about? Could be checking your credit score, maybe having that conversation about your salary, or, hey, even just buying yourself a pack of envelopes to try out that, old school budgeting method. Whatever it is, take that step and keep the momentum going.
That's right. That's right. It's all about progress, not perfection.
Fantastic point to end on. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. And we will see you next time for another insightful exploration of a topic that matters.